So I'm going to be talking to you guys about the Model-Based Enterprise Committee and the Y14 MBE Harmonization Joint Working Group. And I'm going to be going over an update for these two committees and joint working groups. So my name is Evan Kessick. I am the Model-Based Enterprise Discipline Manager at Belkin. And I've been with Belkin for almost a year and a half now, where we're helping organizations bridge strategy and execution to achieve their digital transformation goals. I've got lots of years of experience in engineering and design, where a portion of that I was leading model-based definition and model-based enterprise at a large consumer goods OEM. And I'm very passionate about industry standards, and that's what I'm going to be talking to you guys about today. I'm not going to be talking to you a whole lot about Belkin, but we do have a booth. It's the first one as you walk out this door, so everybody at least has to walk by it. So come by and say hi if you have time. So in today's presentation, we're going to be reviewing the charters for both the Model-Based Enterprise Committee and the Y14 MBE Harmonization Joint Working Group. It's the longest name of all time, and I'm going to say that name a lot. We're going to dive into why industry standards matter, right? So we're kicking off, I guess I'm kicking off the segment around industry standardization. And Jeff really talked about how standards, rallying around standards, and it's foundational is what he mentioned in his presentation. So we'll talk about the role that the MBE committee is going to play, and then the role that the Harmonization Joint Working Group is going to play, and we'll deep dive into some of the gaps that we're trying to resolve. So before we do that, I want to communicate that the Model-Based Enterprise Committee is a separate committee to the Y14 committees. And the Harmonization Joint Working Group is a joint working group underneath both the Y14 committees and the Model-Based Enterprise Committee. So there was a common failure mode when I gave this presentation at 3DCIC, and we kind of merged those two, the Model-Based Enterprise Committee and the Harmonization Joint Working Group together. So I'm going to be talking about both of these in today's presentation. So we'll start off with the Model-Based Enterprise Committee. And so the Model-Based Enterprise Committee is chartered to develop standards or related products that provide rules, guidance, and examples for the creation, use, and reuse of model-based data sets and data models within a model-based enterprise. And our charter is fairly broad, and I've developed some focus areas that I want to walk through. But before we do that, I want to shed some light on the new model-based enterprise definition that was just released within the Y1447. That's the Model Organization Practices Standard. The latest revision is 2023. And this is a great example of how the Harmonization Joint Working Group is supporting the Y14 committees, and specifically Y1447. And what the Harmonization Joint Working Group came up with is an organization that uses digital methodologies as the foundation to enable deployment of products from concept to disposal. And this definition is also fairly broad, and I think once we understand the boundaries of a model-based enterprise and the inner workings, I think this definition will have to be updated. But it complements the charter that we're focused on within the Model-Based Enterprise Committee. When we think about digital methodologies, that's the creation, reuse of model-based data sets from concept to enable deployment of products from concept to disposal. So as we move forward, here is a contrived model-based enterprise. And it's focused on the various different domains of an enterprise, like systems requirements, engineering, our consumption domains like manufacturing, quality, and supply chain. It's focused on people, process, and tools, and also product lifecycle traceability. And so some of the key focus areas that we want to be focused on in the Model-Based Enterprise Committee is identifying the model-based data sets that are being created, reused, and augmented throughout these various different domains. Right? So we want to identify all of these model-based data sets and data models. We also want to identify the common information that's being exchanged across these enterprise domains to perform standard lifecycle work activities. So we can focus on digitally connecting these domains to each other. Right, so as we identify the model-based data sets within each domain, really focusing on the information within these model-based data sets that is being used to do product lifecycle work activities, right? This step is really, really important. We want to identify the interoperability challenges of model-based data sets and technical data, not only internal to your OEM manufacturing, but also extending off into your supply chain as well. And there's a lot of focus during the last presentation about bringing the supply chain up to the digital age. We also want to manage gaps and concerns between existing standards affecting a model-based enterprise and model-based definition adoption. And this is where the Harmonization Joint Working Group is really focused, is around gaps and concerns on authoring model-based definition and the interoperability of model-based definition and also within a model-based enterprise. So we'll talk more about these 4 bullet points as we move forward. So at the end of the day, we want to manage model-based data sets, their linkages and the data flow between these domains so we can ultimately establish industry standardization, governance rules for this common information that is being exchanged. So this is a lot, and hopefully some of these or maybe all of these resonate with you because we're going to need some help. The Model-Based Enterprise Committee has had a change in leadership, so I'm actually going to be the chair for the Model-Based Enterprise Committee moving forward. We do have a new vice chair who's Mark Morali. He has a wealth of experience in mechanical systems and model-based systems engineering. But we have a technical secretary position that's open for nomination. So if you or you know of somebody that's passionate about these focus areas, implementing model-based enterprise, right, we definitely want to hear from you and we need some help. We have 9 members today, and that also includes our leadership. Okay, so we are looking to grow. So we need people to get involved and who are passionate to help push these focus areas forward. We are meeting virtually. Okay, so lately we've been meeting, there's closed meetings, but we will have a cadence where we're going to have open meetings that are open to members and guests to help push our agenda forward. But we are also meeting in person at the upcoming ASME spring meetings in Denver, Colorado. So if you are going to be there at the ASME spring meetings, I recommend that you come check us out. We're going to be meeting on April 30th from 1 to 4. And it's going to be more of a open forum. We're not going to have enough committee members there to have an actual committee meeting, but we can talk about how we can realize these focus areas. All right. So next we'll talk about the Y14 MBE Harmonization Joint Working Group. And this joint working group is chartered to collect model-based definition and model-based enterprise concerns and ideas in relation to the current Y14 standards, and then where these standards need to be adapted to meet the emerging needs of a model-based enterprise. So we're really focused on ensuring harmonization across Model-Based Enterprise Committee and also Y14 committees and standards, supporting the creation and the interoperability of model-based definition. And if you look at the graphic on the lower right, you'll notice that this is truly a joint effort between a model-based enterprise committee, standards, and Y14. And you'll also see that across our leadership as well. So we have 2 co-chairs. Ashley Schmidt is representing the Y14 side of things, myself representing the model-based enterprise. And then we have Dan Fury, who is jack of all trades. He's our technical secretary from Action Engineering, and he represents really both. Our members are full today, so we have 10 members that represent Y14, 10 members that represent the model-based enterprise, and then obviously we're meeting, we have open meetings, and I encourage everyone that wants to be involved. It's open to members and guests to help push these concerns and ideas that we've collected, and we'll talk more about that at the end of our presentation. But the idea is that as we collect these concerns and ideas, around the interoperability and creation of model-based definition, we want to write recommendations back to the Y14 standards and also the Model-Based Enterprise Committee. All right, so that can be also developing industry white papers as needed depending on the concept and topic. So why do industry standards matter? All right, and the role that the Model-Based Enterprise Committee is going to play. So here's a relatively simple example. So here's a single view on an engineering drawing where I'm authoring product definition without industry standards. And you notice I'm using coordinate linear dimensions to communicate feature-to-feature relationships, right? And I have non-functional product definition. I don't have use of the datum system because it doesn't exist yet, right? I don't have those industry standards to rally around. And I have ambiguous requirements. And when we look towards our manufacturing and our supply chain, whether it's regional or a global supply chain, we quickly realize that we have multiple languages, and without industry standards, we're going to have multiple interpretations and multiple inspection methods for these requirements. And I guess maybe this is manageable if by engineering calling these suppliers to communicate this, the intended interpretation of this product definition. But when we get to part acceptance, it's going to be questionable, right? It's not manageable for engineering to talk with our global supply chain to confirm product definition. So insert industry standards, right? So now I have that same view on the same engineering drawing, or maybe this is model-based definition, a presentation state from that model-based definition. And I'm authoring product definition with industry standards. Standards like ASME Y14.5, geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, 1441 if I'm doing model-based definition, or even 14100, and I'm sure there are other industry standards that we could list here. But I'm using geometric dimensioning and tolerancing to communicate those feature-to-feature relationships. I now have access to the datum system, so I'm locating and orienting my tolerance zones back to functional interfaces, right? And I have clear and understood requirements. And when I look towards my global supply chain or my manufacturing facilities, I'm now using a global symbolic language, right, to mitigate those language issues. And I have a single interpretation and a single inspection method thanks to industry standards. Right, so you guys get the idea that we're going to have a much better time when it comes to part acceptance. But if something as simple as authoring product definition, right, we need industry standards to make this happen. But what about industry standards for a model-based enterprise? Right, so throughout a product's life cycle, we'll be creating, reusing, and augmenting product requirements, product definition, and model-based data sets throughout the various different domains of our enterprise. And we recognize domains like model-based systems engineering, where you'll develop system requirements to share with your enterprise. Model-based software to generate software for your mechanical systems. Model-based design, where you'll perform validation, 3D tolerance stock analysis, or simulation prior to authoring your product definition within model-based definition, and then into our consumption domains for model-based manufacturing, quality, and even into sustainment. And the idea is that we want to generate a traceable digital thread of these model-based data sets as they're being created, reused, and augmented within our model-based enterprise. But when we look at all of the industry standards within these respective domains, right, we realize that we have pockets of standards. And maybe some of these standards span across these domains, but for the most part, they're siloed. And that we need standards to help digitally connect these domains to each other, focused on the model-based data sets that are being created and reused, and the information that is being exchanged so we can digitally connect these domains. And the Harmonization Joint Working Group is primarily focused with authoring standard compliant product definition within model-based definition, right? That's compliant to the current industry standards. And then they're consuming or leveraging through either native CAD or neutral CAD, focus on the interoperability of that product definition with manufacturing and quality, right? Or maybe even into model-based design. So they're focused on the interoperability of technical data. So another focus area that I think the Model-Based Enterprise Committee should be focused on is the interoperability of technical data. And so here is a quick definition for a 3D technical data package, but that is the complete authoritative technical description of a part comprised of artifacts that support the interoperability, right, the traceability, and the human readability of technical data. And hopefully we all agree that a technical data package should be complete, right? It should communicate fit, form, and function, but the key here is for who and for what, right? And that we need to understand our downstream audience, that our downstream audience is comprised of humans. It's comprised of machines and software and systems. And how can we generate a technical data package that supports our downstream audience? And when we look at an OEM's technical data package, it can be comprised of native CAD, neutral CAD, 3D viewables, 2D specifications. And oh, by the way, it can also, there's a multitude of each that an OEM can choose from, right? Thank you. And when we look towards our supply chain or in manufacturing, we realize that downstream, they have their own CAD systems, CAM tools, and inspection tools. And we quickly realize that we have software soup, right? So how can we generate a technical data package that works with our supply chain, with our downstream audience that is interoperable to perform the standard lifecycle work activities, right, and the automation that we're all trying to achieve, right? So we need to be focused on providing governance, rules, and standardization for technical data, right? So we can standardize this lifecycle work activities. So enough with that soapbox. We'll move forward into the Harmonization Joint Working Group since I got my 10-minute warning. So again, the Y14 MBE Harmonization Joint Working Group is chartered to collect those model-based definition and model-based enterprise concerns and ideas in relation to the current Y14 standards, right? Really focused on the harmonization and the interoperability of model-based definition. And our members and guests have experience with Y14 committees and their respective model-based enterprises and the Model-Based Enterprise Committee itself. But the idea is that our members have experience with authoring that standard compliant product definition using current industry standards. And they're authoring it within their respective CAD tools. They're identifying these gaps and concerns, and I'm sure all of you in here that are familiar with authoring product definition in a model-based environment, there are tons of issues out there. Right? So this is the group to come rally around and we'll share that pain together. But they have experience with collecting those concerns and then experience with the interoperability of that technical data within their respective enterprises. Right? So we're collecting all of these gaps and concerns, and our whole goal is to write recommendations back to these standards organizations. Right? And it's a lot of fun, right? We're really digging into some unique gaps, and maybe I'm just really nerdy that way and really enjoy it. But here's a list of some of those gaps. We've collected 50 plus, or probably, let's be honest, we've collected probably 100 gaps by now. We've been in existence for almost 2 years, this working group. And these gaps have been voted on, they've been ranked, and this represents the top ranked gaps just for product definition alone. Right? So hopefully some of these resonate with you. And I will go through an example here for pattern syntax authoring and model-based definition. All right, so this is the list for product definition and authoring PMI. And then we also have another list with different themes for manufacturing, supply chain, quality, inspection, and customer logistics. And this list is more centered around the exchange of data. And I think even some of the gaps and concerns that we're working even in product definition is around the exchange of data as well, but maybe it's the missing factor of a metadata framework for some of these concepts that we need to move forward to be interoperable. So here's an example. All right, so pattern syntax authoring and model-based definition, that Y14.5 acknowledges multiple ways to denote a pattern. Some of these are listed here. These are the ones that we're focused on, like indicated individually. The between symbol is the one that we're actively working right now. The from to symbol, multiple leader lines. That focusing on the between symbol, right, we're authoring or coming up with user stories to clearly define what we're trying to achieve, and I'll let you guys read through all of that. But here's the graphical representation of just the between symbol in model-based definition. That I have a profile tolerance that's controlling some boundary, right, some collection of features, but I'm using 2 points to define a 3D boundary. Does anybody find a problem with that? Right? And that the graphical representation here, what's the human interpretation? What collection of features would you collect in this case? Right? We're all probably going to have some type of an interpretation here. Is it this grouping of surfaces? This grouping of surfaces, or even this one? Right? And that as we move forward, and even Y1441 acknowledges an associated group, right? That we need semantic associativity. But at the same time, we need to ensure that the machines and the humans are coming to the same interpretation, and that we don't need to have 2 points to define a 3D boundary. That the associated group here is the authoritative source for this profile, because it's clearly communicating the design intent and the boundary that I want to control. And so these are some of the things that we're working towards. And for a classification code 4 and 5, which is model-based definition, we're proposing potentially new symbology, or even that semantic associativity is being added to the standards to be the authoritative source or to actually denote a pattern. So if these things resonate with you, we definitely want you to come be involved. Ben, how am I doing on time?
Oh, that's a good question.
Okay. So here's a list of the current gaps that are in flight. We're working the pattern syntax authoring, multi-feature hold definition. Thank you. Improved definition of interoperability of a feature of size with and without draft. And then commenting and markups in 3D model-based definition. And we're collecting, right now, these are the 4 that are in flight. If you're passionate about a gap that I've shown, or even if you have your own gaps, come lead those. We need leaders, we need people to get involved. And that leading a breakout session is relatively simple. It's filling it, being the scribe, herding the cats within that virtual meeting, and clearly communicating, writing down what is the problem statement, right? What's the user story for this issue, for this idea, this concern that we have? What industry standards are out there today, or maybe the lack of standardization? What is the recommendation for this specific gap, whether it's going to Y14 standards, a model-based enterprise recommendation, or even an industry white paper? And then we're logging our next steps to keep ourselves accountable, right? And we're doing all of this during breakout sessions. And the Harmonization Joint Working Group is meeting in Denver, okay? It is right here, right? We're meeting for an entire day from 9 a.m. to 5 on Monday. So if you're going to be at the ASME spring meetings, come hang out with us, right? Let's work these gaps together. We want to hear from you and make sure your voices are being heard as we push these gaps and concerns forward. So if you want to get involved, all experience levels are wanted, whether you're an experienced, seasoned veteran, implementing model-based definition, model-based enterprise, or you're just passionate and you want to learn more, right? Come get involved. The easiest way is to contact myself or even Fred Constantino, who's with ASME. And yeah, here's a list of our upcoming meetings. So we definitely want you guys to get involved. So I think I left a couple of minutes for questions.